Hello everyone, my name is DongChan Kim. You can call me DC, DongChan, DC, as you prefer. But that doesn't mean that I'm from Washington or the United States. I'm from South Korea, Seoul. I was born in Seoul. I grew up in Seoul. Actually, one of the Gangnam district, although I'm not rich. I studied international politics and English back in the college in Korea. I served military as an officer for 3 years, Air Force officer. And then I came here to study theology and religious studies in KUL for 4 years. Now I'm doing, prospectively, I'm doing a PhD in history, focusing on history of religions in Korea. And currently I'm a research assistant of a Korean research center of KUL. And how I came here to present this is actually when Anthony was looking for, oh, there comes my family. Yeah, they're my daughter and son and my wife. So Anthony was looking for someone to explain about history of Korea. And of course he contacted Professor Carbone, Dr. Carbone, the head of the Korean Research Center. And Carbone kindly recommended me to give this presentation. And Anthony was all enthusiastic, even to coming to Leuven to meet me, and like we discussed about the presentation together. And it was really impressive to me that a person from Belgium or Wallonia coming all the way to Leuven to talk about Taekwondo and the history of Korea. And I felt like so much pressure. Wow, I have to prepare a lot. I mean, this is very important people that I need to really explain about history of Korea as a Korean. So it is my honor to come here to give this presentation. And I was wondering, I heard that not all of you are from Belgium. Is that correct? May I ask, where you are from?
Netherlands.
Netherlands?
Kosovo.
Oh, Kosovo. Okay, sorry. Okay, Kosovo. And Luxembourg. Spain. Okay. Is that it? That's the diverse. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So it's all over the Europe, I would say. And I'm from Korea, and my family as well. Not all the other Koreans, I think they left. Yes, so here's the history of Korea and the trace of Taekwondo values. For me, I only had Taekwondo. Actually, some of the people asked me whether I practiced Taekwondo, and I only have 1 year experience of Taekwondo when I was 6 years old. I had Pumti at the time, but I think I got too scared of the master, and then I was afraid to go there often, I guess, and then I apparently stopped going. But as I was preparing this presentation, I began to really reconsider. Maybe I should do Taekwondo. I mean, I should learn Taekwondo because I was surprised by these values. I was surprised by this history. And I started to value this. I started to discover things. And I do have admiration for our masters. And I believe that you are all black belts then? Most of you, or all of you? Yes. Oh, wow. That's very good. That's very impressive. Okay. Okay, so this is the outline of the presentation. I will briefly mention the values of Taekwondo, the spirit of Taekwondo, 극기 and 홍익. I will explain later. and the 5 values of Taekwondo: humility, self-control, loyalty, perseverance, and fair play. Although I will not explain those values, you must already know. And of course, the other lectures, I'm aware that they will talk about these values even deeper. But my focus is talking about history of Korea. And since I had a degree in theology and religious studies, I will relate these values to the religions in Korea. So for old Joseon, this is like the Neolithic Bronze Age period. Hongi Ingan is the spirit of Taekwondo. And I will talk about shamanism related to that. During the Three Kingdoms period, humility and Buddhism. Goryeo and Joseon period, self-control and loyalty and Confucianism. And the modern period, surprisingly, perseverance and fair play and Christianity. Christianity is crucial to talk about Korea. You cannot understand modern Korea without understanding of Christianity in Korea. So, and then conclusion, beyond Korea, Taekwondo or Taekwondos, plural Taekwondo. Is it one unified Taekwondo? And the ultimate goal of Taekwondo practice. So these two are the spirit of Taekwondo, Kukki and Hongik. Kukki means overcoming the self. Kukki. So this is the self. This is the overcoming, Chinese, classical Chinese character. Hongik means this is wide or large, grand, and this refers to overflowing the benefits. So, for example, in Taekwondo, you practice Taekwondo on the high level. And what do you do when you reach the high level? You want to transmit this good thing. You want to, because you love Taekwondo so much. Your heart is just, you cannot stop your heart. You want to teach, you want to, deliver this good values, good practice, good behaviors, good culture to others. And this is overflowing the benefit. So these are the 2 pillars of the spirit of Taekwondo. And of course, these are, according to Kukki One website, both in English and in Korean. Now these are the 5 values of Taekwondo. Humility or integrity. Some people say integrity, other people say humility. Self-control, 염치 in Korean, humility. Self-control, 절제. Loyalty, or some people call indomitable spirit. In Korean, 백절불굴. Perseverance, 인내. And fair play or courtesy, or according to Anthony's presentation, it was respect for others. So we have these 5 values. Actually, one of my cousins is also a Taekwondo master. He's 5dan, 5dan. And when I was preparing this presentation, I actually called him. I texted him. So, how the spirit of Taekwondo is related to the skills of Taekwondo, the movements of the Taekwondo? And he was trying to explain to me how he does it with his children, with his disciples, students. And he says, actually, the last fair play or courtesy or the respect for others, this is the most important value to him. And why is that so? And he answers that Taekwondo highlights the importance of relationship, the relationship. How this world around you is relational. How we are all connected. This Taekwondo appreciates. That's why you even show courtesy toward the counterpart after Gyeorgi. And even to the master of the counterpart and the jury. All of them involved in the Gyeorgi, you show respect, you show courtesy. Because Gyeorgi is not just about fighting, but It's about learning one's own achievements through others. Through others. So that's why it is actually fair. It's fair to show, to express courtesy toward others, even after losing. Even after losing. So one shall overcome anger, frustration, and failure by keeping courtesy toward others. So Taekwondo is not about just to attack others, but about protecting and achieving oneself, as actually all Pumse starts with a defensive move, as you might already know this. So this, after this, so we will start talking about history of Korea. Old Joseon. We are not sure that this is really existed as a political entity, but we are aware of that was some signs, traces of culture, because there's no writing about this. So we only have like archaeological findings about this. And the later writings, they talk about Old Joseon, and they say that this Old Joseon has a spirit of Hongik Ingan. Hongik Ingan. So Hongik Ingan means human beings, we are all relational. We are all connected, we are all related, and that's why we need to share, we need to distribute all the good things to others. We need to benefit others. That's the spirit. That was the spirit. And in order to talk about Old Joseon and this spirit, Hongik Ingan, I need to introduce you to the shamanism. Does anybody know shamanism? What shaman is? Yes?
How should I say it?
Just briefly, if you can explain.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't expecting that. For what I know, and I'm expert far from there, but shamanism, at least in early China, was about reach out to the spirits, enter in communication with them, and for some particular individuals to be possessed by the spirit and become some kind of intermediary between the spiritual world and the human world.
Yes, thank you very much. That was a very good summary of shamanism. I will add to that. So, we must trace back to that period. It happened during the New Stone Age, the Neolithic Age. And what is the significant thing about Neolithic Age? Is that there was sort of an enlightenment in humans. That the humans begin to stop be only passively dependent on nature, and they started to make use of nature. So agricultural revolution happened there, and the wealth began to accumulate, and the society began to get larger. So there was a sort of an enlightenment, big changes during this age, and shamanism developed along with it. So shamanism is sort of a humanism. You can understand it as a humanism. And because you start make use of nature, you become more responsibility. You become more responsible toward nature. You need to take charge. You need to be responsible for the nature. And that's shamans come in. And shamans are responsible to communicate between nature and human society, or the heavenly power or the earthly power. So shamans became the mediator. And now, this information is actually written in Kukkiwon Korean website, but not in the English website. So this is an interesting difference there. Heaven, earth, human. They say that 저고리, Taekwondo, the clothing, the uniform, 저고리 represents heaven. And 바지 represents earth. And 띠 represents human. So 띠 is mediating the heaven and earth. So, and then, there's also another elements of shamanism, which is 5 elements theory, or 5 dynamics, or 5 principles, you call it, whatever. There are 5 elements: metal, earth, tree, fire, water. So shamans, or the ancient people in Neolithic age, they observed this earth, this nature, and they discovered that they have certain cycle. Like metal, they hold earth together. Earth grows, tree gets burned by fire, which is sun, and then the sun enables water. The sun actually heats the earth, and then the water goes up on the earth, and the water goes down as a rain. So they saw it as a cycle of nature with these 5 elements. And, or they also saw it as a cycle of body as well. For example, the relation between fire and water. If you work hard, if you practice Taekwondo with sweat, actually you're moving your heart, you're pumping your heart, which is fire. And then after pumping your heart, you sweat, and your saliva becomes better, your blood becomes fresh. And then after practicing Taekwondo, food tastes so much better, doesn't it? So this is how fire and water works in your body, as well as on the earth. Now, shamanism also designates these 5 elements with color, and you will see interesting part. The color of metal, white, yellow, blue or green, red, and what would that be? Water. Didn't I just repeat the colors of D? White, yellow, blue or green, red, and then black. Black. The color of water is black. The color of water is black. Water is the essence of life. And the color of essence of life is black. And the more interesting part is that in ancient Korean language, when you call God divinity, it's black. Kom. You call it Kom. Kom is the title of God. And actually, this is similar to in Mongolian and Japanese too. In Japanese, what is the title for God? Kami. Kami. So kami, kom, komi, it sounds similar here. So, and if you see, do you know Ghibli Studio? Ghibli Animation? Yes, the younger student nods. So it's like a Japanese animation. One of the things they show, like they say that there's a God living around in this house, and they express it as a black dust. The color of black is the color of God in East Asia. So you guys are all a people of God, as black belt people. Something to keep in mind. Then, what does it mean to be God here? In shamanism, what does it mean to be God? It means that you are responsible connecting heaven and earth. You are responsible to transmit the values. You are responsible to cherish these values, develop these values. That means what it means to be God. Gukki and hongik. You need to overcome yourself, and you need to help others to overcome themselves too. That's what it means to be God in this context. However, this Neolithic revolution, this shamanism, or this agricultural revolution, did not result in peaceful distribution. If you get more, you want more. So people begin to fight. And that's also what happened to Korea. And Koreans, they established many different kingdoms, mainly 3 kingdoms. And during this 400 or 500 years, they never stopped fighting. They just fighting. And they are quite brutal too, relentless wars. But at the same time, on the other hand, they wanted to grow. They wanted to learn as well. They also wanted to overcome the shamanistic culture, because shamanistic culture was becoming older. And they wanted new religion, and that was Buddhism. They introduced Buddhism this time. And I think, this is my interpretation, Buddhism is a religion of humility. And so we're going to talk about humility, in the history of Korea. And if you think about Buddhism, like who is Buddha? Who is Siddhartha? He was a prince who gave up his social status to become a beggar. He humiliated himself to become a beggar. And then actually that's what happened to many princes or many royal families in 3 kingdoms, and also after Goryeo dynasty. Many royal families became monks. Of course, they were not that beggars, they were like very rich monks too, but that was the idea of it, like to give up the power, to humiliate oneself. Because they realized that, at the end of Neolithic and Bronze Age, they realized that, now we are ruling all. Like we are at the top of the food chain. We can make use of this nature. But now, something is wrong. We are fighting over each other. And then Buddha realizes that, okay, maybe it's time to give up this power. Maybe it's time to go down in this hierarchy and to become a beggar. And Buddha becomes poor to make others' life rich. That's the idea of Buddhism. Now, I will talk about this General Kim Yu-shin. He's my 60th great-grandfather. Well, you would find that many of the Kims from Korea, they would say, he's our great-grandfather. He's the one who actually united all these 3 kingdoms. But he was not from any of these 3 kingdoms. He was from an even smaller political entity called Kaya. I will show Kaya later. Now, so the northern part was Goguryeo, this part was Baekje, and this part was Silla. These 3 kingdoms, they fought each other. Out of these 3, Goguryeo was the strongest. Actually, in the earlier, Baekje was the strongest in the 4th century. Goguryeo became stronger in 5th century, and Silla became stronger later, and Silla united the 3 kingdoms. And when Silla united 3 kingdoms, the leadership of Goguryeo and Baekje, a lot of them, majority of them, they went to Japan. And Goguryeo, especially Goguryeo, was really strong. Like all these Chinese dynasties, they tried to invade Goguryeo with like millions of soldiers. I'm not sure that was a real number though, because Chinese like to bluff the number in the history record. But they really sent a lot of armies to invade Goguryeo because they knew that Goguryeo was strong. Goguryeo, they defeated all of them. And so they are like the horse people here. And they went to Japan, and Goguryeo leadership actually settled here, around the current Tokyo, the Kanto region. And they are known to develop samurai culture. With a horse, with a good armor, and they began to develop samurai culture. And Baekje people, they went to this part of Japan, and they became like the elites, social class of the Japanese society. Even now, the Japanese emperor admits that his mother's side is a descendant of Baekje. But you must understand, so the General Kim Il-sung, he is from Gaya. So this was not a centralized kingdom. All these other three, Goguryeo, Baekje, Shilla, they were all centralized kingdoms with Buddhism. But Gaya could not become decentralized. And they were destroyed earlier by Shilla. They were absorbed to Shilla later. And when they were absorbed to Shilla, the grandfather of Kim Il-sung was also the crucial member of Gaya. And Kim Il-sung, as a minority of Shilla leadership, they united the three kingdoms. You see, there's a humility in this story. Because this General Kim Il-sung was not even from the strongest Goguryeo or the stronger Baekje, and not even from Shilla. He was from Gaya, the smallest, the weakest polity. But he was the one who could unite the three kingdoms. And here I can quote, the first becomes the last, and because Goguryeo Baekje, they got kicked out. They were destroyed, even though they were much stronger than Shilla. But later, Shilla could become the stronger one, and the last became the first. Humility in the history. Goryeo and Joseon. Now, Goryeo is like a transitional moment between Buddhism and Confucianism. Goryeo was totally Buddhist country. However, Goryeo began to develop Confucianism, began to introduce Confucianism more seriously. And Joseon, this is actually Chinese Confucian scholars are also admitting. Joseon is the most Confucianized dynasty ever in the history of Confucianism. So the most Confucianized country is not to be found in China. It is actually to be found in the history of Korea. And the two most important values of Confucianism, if I would choose, is that self-control and loyalty, or indomitable spirit. You see, these are the current cash of Korean cash, and they are all Confucians. These two are very famous Confucian scholars. He's the wisest king in Joseon dynasty. She is the wisest woman in Joseon dynasty. That's about 50 euro, 10 euro, 5 euro, 1 euro. Now, if you want to talk about Confucianism, we must talk about the king, the role of the king. How the kings were viewed in Confucianism is something different than how the kings are viewed in Europe or in other places. In a Confucianized country, kings are servants. So every day, kings had to go to this meeting, every day, morning and night, to learn from high officials. They needed to study Confucian classics every day, and they needed to learn, because they are young, usually younger, and these high officials are usually like older and really full of knowledge of Confucianism, Confucian classics. And they were always teaching, like, no, that's not what is said in Confucian classics. This is what kings will hear every day. They will have to train themselves every day as a Confucian leader. And Not only that, the kings will have to take care of all these other administrative things. And kings were not just kings could not be part of the decision making. He was only a decision taker. Well, that's actually pretty much same with the other institutions, though. And there's a famous quote in a Confucian classic that the heaven or the master of the king is actually the people. So the people is not the ones who are supposed to serve kings. It's actually the kings are the ones who are supposed to serve the people. That's the actually crucial idea of Confucius. Internally, they were trying to perfect the Confucianism in the dynasty. But externally, during this time, Goryeo and Joseon, they faced numerous invasions. Because after Silla united all these other three kingdoms, Silla actually did never invade other countries. Silla realized that, okay, maybe this fight has to stop. And then actually the following dynasties, they follow the path too. Goryeo and Joseon, they never invaded other countries, but they were only being invaded numerous times by Khitans, Mongolians, Manchurians, Japanese. And we always try to protect this country. Even the monks, these common people, they were all volunteering. They are called the righteous army. So even when the government armies were just abandoning the country, when Japanese or Mongolians came in, all these common people, they rise up and they fought. And I'll introduce you one more general during this period, Lee Sun-shin. He's still like a national hero to Korea. He was a Navy general. He fought against Japanese in 1592. That was a very difficult time for Joseon dynasty. Lee Sun-shin is very famous because he fought 23 times with Japanese Navy, and he won 23 times. So undefeatable. And if I tell you one story, so he became too popular. So even king was jealous of him. So actually he was imprisoned one time after winning several battles. Some other people, they were jealous of him. They put a false accusation, and then he was imprisoned. And then when Japanese army began to advance even more, king was like, okay, we need to let go of him, and then we need to use him again. And then he got back, and then he went back to the south part of Korea. So this part is full of fields, rice fields. This part are full of mountains. So this part is like a rice storage for Korea. It's very rich land. So if you're a Japanese, which part would you attack first? Which part would you want to attack? Of course, this part. You want to take the resources. So a lot of Japanese army were going around here. And Lee Sun-shin, out of prison, came here, found out that there were only 12 ships. 12 ships against 133 ships of Japanese. And so the kings or the high officials in Seoul, who have no idea about wars, they were just seeing numbers here. Oh, 12 against 133. So you give up there, you join to the other army. So you make yourself bigger and then fight. That's what their orders. But Lee Sun-shin wrote a letter to King. It's a famous letter, it's a famous quote. Dear Majesty, for I still have 12 ships. I will fight. I will fight. And actually, he lured those 130 ships into a very narrow valley here in the seaside. And he destroyed 133 ships with 12 ships. Indomitable spirit. Indomitable spirit. But was he loyal to King? So that's the question of Confucianism here. Was Lee Sun-shin loyal to the king only? I don't think so. I think he was just trying to protect the people. The people here. They will suffer. He knows that they will suffer so much once Japanese take that land. That's exactly what happens during the Japanese colonization, actually. So, the loyalty, the indomitable spirit, shouldn't it be understood as a love for the people then, here, in this case, in this context? Now let's go into the modern period. Let me have a glass of water. Now, even these values, even this history, could not prevent Korea to get better. This modern period is a very painful period for Korea. Not only it experienced colonization, internal or international war, Korean War, several dictatorships, military dictatorships. It's about 100 years of painful period. 100 years. And this is, interestingly, also a period for Christianity to be introduced and developed in Korea. And in order to explain modern Korea, almost every scholar, even outside of Korea, they talk about March 1st movement. March 1st movement in 1919. This is the crucial event for all modern Koreans. Why? Because this is the first time that almost everybody in Korea protested against oppression, imperialistic oppression. So this is like French Revolution or American independence. Like this is almost equal to this kind of event. So everybody, this is also a national holiday, March 1st movement is a national holiday, March 1st. And the thing about March 1st movement is that, Korea became colony of Japan in 1910. So 1919, it takes 9 years for Koreans to get angry, to get worked up, to protest against Japan. Because actually, at the end of Joseon Dynasty, everybody was miserable. I mean, the government was corrupted. All these foreign powers were coming in and out, like they looked like invading. And China, Japan, Russia had a war in Korea. They fought in Korea. Koreans didn't fight that war. So like all this chaotic period was going on. So the people did not even care when Japan observed Korea. The people were miserable anyway. So it was really quiet colonization. And it was very shameful colonization because the leadership of Korea, they voluntarily gave up sovereignty. They signed, okay, we give up. But nobody really significantly angry at the time. But it took 9 years. maybe this was a bad idea. The Koreans began to think that, okay, Japanese rule, it's bad. Okay, it's brutal. They're controlling too much. They are monitoring too much. Okay, this is suffocating. And then they began to protest. And that was the first case, March 1st movement. And it was done by mostly Christians. It was done by mostly Christians. For example, Japanese government, they arrested about 20,000 people after this movement, and 20% of them were Christians. At the first day of the movement, there were 33 representatives claiming independence in Seoul. 16 out of 33 were Christians. So half of the representatives were Christians. But if you think that there was actually only 1% of Christian population out of all population in Korea at the time. There was like 200,000 people, Christians, out of 20 million Christians, 20 million Koreans. So it was a very minority people, Christians, at the time, but there were leading roles of all this independence movement. And it is not an overstatement that Christians in Korea, they shape what the modern Korea is now, especially South Korea. And so, because this modern period was a painful period, it's the time of a perseverance. It's the time of perseverance. And it is the time that people want the fairness the most. This is not fair. This comes repeatedly here during this period. This is not fair. This is not fair. We fight. This is not fair. We fight. And that was the first movement. And we constantly fight like April 19th revolution, which is the revolution against the first dictator. This is a 1987 revolution. This is a revolution against the military dictator. And this is 2016 Candlelight Revolution. This is a revolution against the corrupted president, Park Geun-hye. And we were able to impeach her. So throughout these 100 years, we kept fighting, we kept persisting, perseverance. And because we have to be fair. We have to be fair now. It's not fair. Colonization, it's not fair. Dictatorship, it's not fair. We need to fight. We need to fight. During the colonization, one very clear example of unfairness was the comfort women issue. Have you heard of this? Comfort women? Comfort women refers to a sex slave, a woman forcibly mobilized by Japanese government, and they were located on the front line of war, and they had to comfort the Japanese soldiers sexually. Kim Hak-sun, the first comfort woman lady who had courage to say that I was comfort woman. Kim Hak-sun in I believe it's 1994 or 5. Because even Korean society was shushing, because this is like too shameful thing to say. And as you understand, this was a Confucianized country. You know, this is a great shame. But it took a lot of courage for her, Kim Hak-sun, to say that this is not fair. what happened to me? She was 15, 16, 13, even 13, 12. They were mobilized, forced to become comfort women. She could have hid. She could have hidden that past. But she didn't. She came out and said, I was comfort women. Now, we hear terrible things from Japanese politicians. Like, they say that, oh, they were prostitutions. They voluntarily came. Or the numbers are false, or whatever. It's like German politicians saying that, oh, those Jewish people, they went for money by going to concentration camp. It's equal. That's an equal statement. They are still fighting right now. Japanese government, the very recent agreement between Korea and Japan was that, okay, we are giving this compensation money for these comfort women, but please stop mentioning this. So which means that I'll give you money, so shut up. No. That's not fair agreement, is it? That's not fair agreement. Fair play. This man, internally, dictatorships was another problem. He was a labor worker. In his hand, it's a law of labor. He wanted to be treated fairly as a labor worker during 1970s and 80s. But he was on the blacklist of all the entrepreneurs. You do not hire him because he makes noises in the company. So nobody listened to him. But all he was saying that, let's keep this law, let's follow this law, which is already there. He was not even talking about changing the law. Because the law was not kept during the industrialization of Korea, just like any other countries. And one day, he went to church in the morning, he prayed, and then he went to the central street of Seoul, he burned himself. Please listen to me. And then actually, a lot of labor workers now in Korea, they commemorate him. They remember him as they always trying to improve the environment of the labor workers. Both of them were Christians. And there was this is a Catholic cathedral in Korea, which is a symbol for a democratization movement. So Christians were always here and there in the important events of modern Korea. Now, actually, one more thing. So this 2016 Candlelight Revolution was actually mainly because of the 2014 Sewol Ferry incident. Have you heard of this? Sewol Ferry incident in 2014. About 300 students were going on a school trip in a ship to Jeju Island, and the ship sank, and nobody rescued them because the captain of the ship, they gave order on the broadcasting system within the ship, stay there. And the captain was the first one to be rescued. And these coast guards, all these police or these firemen, who were supposed to rescue them, they were busy reporting to the higher officials. It was just ridiculous incident. And that's how the president got impeached for the most reason, actually. And now you might remember, or you might have seen the recent tragedy Itaewon suffocation incident. About 100 or even almost 200 young people suffocated in the street of Itaewon during the Halloween festival. This is not fair. I mean, they were not supposed to die. The police could have done work better. The government could have worked out better. Actually, all this media of foreign media, they were actually emphasizing the role of government here. It was not a coincidental disaster. It was a humanitarian disaster. And we're still saying that to the government too. I mean, to those who are responsible, to those police, to those firemen, to those officials. This is not fair. Why did these young people die? And some of the Christians in Korea, they were even saying like, they deserve to die because they were going there out of lust. They were going to this devil's festival, Halloween festival. You shouldn't go there. This is not something Christians should say. Christians must answer in Korea about these things, So perseverance and fair play are the key words for the modern period. Conclusion, beyond Korea. Now I see that so many different people are practicing Taekwondo. And I remember, I recall the saying of my cousin, Taekwondo master back in Korea. He said a very interesting statement. He said that if there are 100 trainees, there are 100 Taekwondos. Because people are so different individually. So Taekwondo must be different. It may have one spirit, but there are many different contexts. In the other parts of the world, in the other generations, in the other cultures, there's so many differences. So humility, self-control, loyalty, perseverance, and fair play, I just try to relate those values in the context of Korean history. And I wonder how you would understand those values in your contexts, in your histories, in your stories, in your lives. Because it will be realized differently. It will come as differently. Then what is the ultimate goal of Taekwondo? According to Kukki1 website, it says, so you need to first start overcoming yourself, self-interest, and then you overcome the group interest, and then you reach the level of non-self. Mu'a. Ooh, what does that mean? What does that mean? Non-self? Do you know what that means? But I can summarize it very well. A Korean theologian, Ryu Young-mo, he said that God exists by non-existence. God exists by non-existence. And I will apply that according to each period. In shamanism, water flows down to lift up every life. Buddha becomes a beggar to make others rich. A Confucian king serves the people. Jesus lives by dying. Jesus lives by dying. So that summarizes all these different religions in the history of Korea. So I ask you, you divine people, black belt, how will you do Taekwondo? What is your way of Taekwondo? I will finish by this quote. He was one of the influential leaders after the liberation from Japanese colony, but he got assassinated because he was too influential. I have a dream that Korea becomes the most beautiful country in the world. Our wealth should be just enough to make living. Our power should be just enough to protect ourselves. Only thing I wish for is the highest level of culture. Because the power of culture enables our happiness as well as others' well-being. Do you see that's coming? K-pop, K-drama? Is it making you happy? I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. But Korea, if you think about modern Korea, it is the only country who became a developed country out of colony right now in the history. The only country right now. And actually, before all this political or economic power were like trying to expand its influence, like China right now, the cultural power are coming first, before this, right now. You hear about BTS, Taekwondo, Blackpink, or K-drama first. Before that, like, oh, Korea is so wealthy, Korea is so powerful in the army power or whatever. But China is different, just to compare. China is trying to show off their power, military power, economic power in Africa right now, trying to influence this with this power. And they're actually trying to like, how do I say, put culture as well, Chinese culture. But have you seen Koreans like trying to evangelize you with culture? No, like nobody's telling you to watch K-drama. Nobody's telling you to do Taekwondo. No Koreans, at least. But because the culture takes voluntariness. It takes, you cannot force it. You can never force it. Yes, and that will be my presentation. Thank you very much.